It is another amazing day here on Excuse Me, Doctor. Welcome, 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 my Be Health Empowered family. Thank you so much for joining us once again. And of course, my name is Dr. Melissa Clark. Please call me Dr. Mel. And for the newbies, especially, we want to welcome you. Thank you for joining and let you know that we are here each and every week on Excuse Me, Doctor, making sure that you have all the information that you need to make wise health decisions, not just for yourself, but also for your family and even for your community. So, again, thank you for joining. And if you are checking us out on YouTube, please make sure to hit that subscribe button. If you're checking us out on Facebook, hit that like button. We truly, truly, truly appreciate you for it. And for those who are returning and are here all the time with us, you know that I don't do this by myself. There's just no way. I have to have my two amazing co-hosts, Miss Lila Mays and Mr. Wayne Bruce. How y'all doing?
Hey, hey.
Hey.
I'm here.
Dwayne Wayne.
I done sprung forward. And here we are.
I know. And here we are. Totally. As I was telling y'all, it totally took me by surprise. I had no idea. So totally unprepared. My body is even more unprepared. But like you said, here we are.
Did you
Welcome
miss
to
something? Were you
spring.
late somewhere, Dr. Mel?
Well, no, thankfully, everything worked out. But actually what I am glad of is the additional daylight. I get to walk after work now. I don't have to worry about walking in the darkness. So yeah, I am super happy about that.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you don't have to walk in the dark any longer.
Yes. Walking in the light. Yes.
You walking towards just don't walk towards the light. Don't
right.
Don't
just walk in it.
We need you here.
Yep.
What's going
and we're in another month, right?
In another month. We're in another month. We just finished Black History Month, truth be told. So we're trying to have in today's show to fall in Black History Month, but it didn't turn out that way. So,
That's all right though. That's all right. Cause we celebrating Black History every month. It's Black History Month 24/7 around these parts. So it's all good.
Exactly. And also today is Harriet Tubman Day. So happy Harriet Tubman Day, y'all. And she led people into freedom, right? And so our topic today, inspiring the next generation of Black physicians, is so needed right now because the health of Black people in the US is worse off than many other groups, as we know. Heart disease, cancer, diabetes, obesity, high blood pressure. And that's from the cradle to the grave. We see disparities in health outcomes, from higher risk of birth complications to shorter lifespans, up to 20-year difference in lifespans between Black people and white people in some cities. So we really need inspiration, somebody to help lead us to a place where we're having better health outcomes.
And didn't I read somewhere that when you have a doctor that is the same race as the patient, outcomes for Black patients at least are better? Right?
Exactly. You are absolutely right. When Black patients are treated by Black physicians, study shows, and it's also literature showing Spanish-speaking doctors and Spanish-speaking patients, same thing. Mm-hmm. Some studies show that communication is better, patient satisfaction goes up, and people's health improves.
And that's so interesting because it's so counter to this whole anti-DEI movement where the country's stepping back from the commitment to actively diversify the workforce, and that includes healthcare.
So how do we get Black young people involved to go into healthcare? How can we do that?
Well, that is what we're going to be talking about today on Excuse Me, Doctor, because we have an incredibly inspiring guest that we are truly fortunate to have. His name is Dr. Russell Ledet.
Yes, and he's the one with that famous picture, the 15 white coats. He's been everywhere from, that picture. He's been everywhere from Good Morning America, Southern Living, telling his inspiring story and the work he does to inspire and lift up more people into a medical career.
So we're going to talk to him about his career. We're going to talk to him about that particular picture in particular, which was taken on a slave plantation, making it even more powerful. So yeah, it's going to be an incredible show. So y'all stay tuned. Share it with as many people as you know, because it's going to be really good.
Call up your auntie. Get her on the computer.
Right. Call up your nephew, your niece and your nephew and share it with them.
Yeah.
Right. But before we do that, we have to recap the week that was in health and wellness.
And it's a short recap because we have a lot to cover.
Recap. Okay, look. Y'all know how I like butter on everything. But you better not. What's that talking about, Dr. Mill?
So there was a recent study done at the Harvard Chan School of Public Health. Mm-hmm. It was on 200,000 participants. So that's a lot of people. And they looked at their eating habits over 30 years. And they showed that a simple dietary change, replacing butter, cutting the butter out and replacing it with plant-based oils, can significantly reduce the risk of premature death.
Wow.
So it looks like we're going to start cutting butter out to save a life. I mean, so what is plant-based oils? You mean like soybean or olive oil, or what is it?
Exactly. Yes, especially olive oil. So they're rich in a certain kind of fat, unsaturated fat, that benefits your health. Butter, on the other hand, has the kind of fat that clogs arteries. So swapping plant-based oils for butter may lower the risk of premature death by up to 17%. And an added bonus, it was actually found protective against cancer and heart disease and stroke. So that's a biggie.
Say less. So that's a pretty small change that I can make that would have a really huge effect on my health and my lifespan, more importantly. So it's EVO on my toast.
Extra virgin olive oil on the toast. Yeah. There you go.
I don't know. I'm just gonna have my toast plain. I'm just
okay.
No, Wayne, they have it in sticks.
Extra virgin olive oil in sticks?
Yes. They have the butter. They have the plant-based butter.
Don't tell Diddy.
Oh my Lord.
Moving right along.
Okay,
the commentary of our co-host does not reflect
the commentary of Dr. Mill in the show.
Right.
All right.
So let's keep on to menopause.
To menopause. I know a lot of people who are having menopausal symptoms, hot flashes, mood swings, sleep disruptions. Let's talk about it, Dr. Mill. Let's talk about this menopause stuff.
Present company included. And, there are just a very few women that I ever come across in that sort of menopausal age that don't have at least one symptom. And God bless them, because they are definitely missing the party. And so there was a retrospective study done. So it was asking women to remember how many symptoms they'd had since going through menopause. And they found that people who experience more menopausal symptoms are more likely to have poor cognitive function and mild behavior impairment. So these are things that sort of set you up for dementia. And they see that sort of correlated with, as you get older, your risk of dementia goes up the more menopause symptoms you have. Now, as I mentioned, it was a retrospective study, which means that they had to rely on people remembering their symptoms. So it's not like the best kind of study out there. So it's not enough evidence to really draw a hard and fast conclusion. But it's an interesting thing to note. Very interesting thing to note.
For sure. So, is there anything that we can do to to not have those symptoms?
Well, you remember one of our favorite guests, Dr. Sharon Malone, uh,
Yes.
uh, talked a lot about estrogen-based hormone therapy, lessening menopausal symptoms.
Hmm.
So there is that, talk to your doctor if you're within 10 years of the onset of menopause. Definitely talk to your
Hmm.
doctor about whether that kind of therapy is appropriate for you. Um, we don't know if starting that therapy, we know that it lessens menopausal symptoms, but we don't know, how it might relate to what they saw in the study about dementia. We do
Dementia.
know
Yeah.
what does lower dementia, though, risk. The risk of dementia is managing your lifestyle habits. So, quitting smoking, maintaining a healthy weight and blood pressure, exercising regularly, managing stress, and really sort of getting out there and maintaining your social connections. That's all of those things are equally important in cutting the risk of dementia.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
Good stuff.
So that's it.
That's that.
So what do we have next?
So
Wayne, what's
look,
up?
it's been a long time, Doc. It's been 2 years. 2 years. We thought we were
That what?
done. We thought we were done, but we can't stop, won't stop.
Won't stop, won't stop.
Weekly debunk. Stopping misinformation in its tracks.
It's back. The weekly
It's back.
debunk. Bama Bama hit me. Bama behold said, I saw the toxic natural folk talking about vitamin A can prevent measles in kids. So I ain't letting my kids get no shots.
I don't know about that. Excuse me, Dr. Mel. Is that true?
That's not true. So having a normal vitamin A level does not protect against the measles, and neither does giving extra vitamin A or giving vitamin A prevent measles. It is not a substitute for vaccination. Now, the rumor probably came from the fact that if a child does have measles, there are some studies that show that giving 2 doses of vitamin A can treat severe cases of measles, but it only works if the child is under 2 and if the child already has the measles. It doesn't work to prevent anybody from getting measles, and it doesn't work in
Mm.
older children or adults. The bottom line is still the measles MMR vaccine or measles, mumps, rubella vaccine is the most effective way to prevent measles. And it's important because now we're seeing measles outbreaks. We talked about that last week here in the state that I live in. News headlines. I got,
Texas.
the flash from the Department of Public Health in my state as a physician that measles is now in my state. And if you were at the airport on such and such a day, you were exposed. So it's more important than ever to make sure that your vaccine status is up to date.
Wow.
So that's
We're back
that's
here.
the debunk.
We're
We're,
back
we're
here.
back here.
Yeah, we're back
Yes, we
here.
are.
We're back here having to debunk
Yeah.
bull stuff from
Buckle
Bama
up.
Bullman.
Buckle up.
Uh,
Buckle
buckle
up.
up. So we're probably going to be doing more debunks in the future. So stay tuned. But that vitamin A,
All right, deuces, Dr.
don't fall
Mel.
for the okey doke. All right. Thank y'all. We'll see you in a little bit. We are going to move into an incredible show for tonight. So, as I mentioned before, evidence shows that when a physician and a patient are from the same background, the patients tend to do better in terms of their health. So, in this anti-diversity, equity, and inclusion environment, where educational doors and opportunities may be closing instead of opening for young people, especially young people of color, what does it take to shatter ceilings and redefine what's possible? This is going to be a really inspiring episode because we're sitting down to talk with Dr. Russell Ledet, MD, PhD, MBA, lots of letters after his name, but he is a physician scientist and a triple boarded resident pediatrician and adult, child, and adolescent psychiatrist. And he's at Indiana University. He went from being a security guard at a hospital to becoming a doctor in its halls. He's going to share his journey with us as man in medicine, as well as his work to support and inspire young Black people to see themselves in scrubs, lab coats, and leadership roles in healthcare. So thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Ledet.
Thank you, Dr. Clark. It's an honor to be here. Thank you all for, allowing me on your platform. And thank you all for those first 15 minutes, because I really needed that laugh after my long day.
Well, I am so glad you enjoyed it. I hope everybody in our Be Health Empowered family enjoyed it too. I know they're going to enjoy you. So I just want to jump right in. You have an extraordinary story. You served in the military. You worked as a security guard at a hospital. Now you're a physician. So when you were standing at that security guard desk, did you ever imagine this particular path for yourself and the way that your life is moving?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. Whether or not I imagined it, it's tough to say. I think there were components of it that I imagined. I think I imagined, I imagined one of the doctors that I had asked to shadow saying yes. I think that is the part of it that I really imagined and said to myself, eventually someone will say yes. I mean, there were literally hundreds of doctors who told me no. And told
You
me
mean
things
to
along the lines
shadow
of,
you, to be able to
yeah, they
shadow
were,
them?
yeah. Oftentimes they would be like, you're a security guard, man. The likelihood of you becoming a doctor is pretty slim, or some version of that. And I always crack this joke. They were right. Security guards don't become doctors. Security guards become double doctors, and I guess in my
Right.
case, triple doctors. So, you know, um, they were right. But I think I imagined. I guess I gave myself permission to have enough hope that it could possibly
Yeah.
happen, and realize that whether or not it would happen was largely on my terms. It was largely going to be,
Mm.
how many times was I not going to be bothered by whether or not somebody said
Right.
no.
Right. Well,
So
you have gone on to earn a PhD, earn an
mhm,
MD, and you're on your way to being triple boarded. Can you
mhm.
explain what that means and how you see your training preparing you? Well, first of all, just explain what triple boarded means so
Yeah,
everybody
so
knows what.
being triple boarded specifically for me means that I am independently training as a pediatrician. I'm also independently training as an adult psychiatrist, and then I will complete fellowship as a child and adolescent psychiatrist. So I'll be able to operate as each of those doctors independently, but I can also, to your point later on, figure out ways to integrate those things together, and provide some pretty unique offering for my patients, and for my community. A lot of what I do is so much about becoming an incredible asset for my community. Um, and I mean that at large, and I also mean that locally and regionally. So wherever I am, I want to make sure that I can, make a difference, but also nationally and internationally, I always want to make sure that I can make a difference too, whether it's with my voice and notoriety, or economics, philanthropy, and things of that nature. And so, it's pretty exciting because I always envisioned this opportunity to be able to treat the patient and their family at the exact same time. And I've luckily been at a program that really supported me being able to do that, and especially me being able to do that for marginalized communities. I know you all
Mhm.
talked a little bit about earlier, and I know we'll talk about this later. Cultural concordance, and how it increases enhanced communication, leads to better
Mhm.
outcomes, greater adherence, and things of that nature. And I think I've seen that because I've one, been at a program that really embraced who I am, what I can bring to the table.
That's great. That's great.
But they were also concerned with what was I aspiring to do with all of this education, talent, experience that I've had over the years, because it's pretty unique. I've been a
Yeah.
veteran, so I love treating the veteran population. Um, and obviously, coming from a marginalized background as a child, I love interacting with those kids and their families as well.
Well, I just want to pause for a second just to say how rare it is to have somebody be able to function as a pediatrician, an adult psychiatrist, and a child and adolescent psychiatrist. That's incredibly rare. A lot of people might not realize that. But tell us a little bit about your background and were there challenges along the way, moments that you doubted yourself, and how did you push through that?
Yeah, and undoubtedly there were definitely some challenges along the way. I grew up in Lake Charles, Louisiana, a segregated city back in the early '90s, and my mom was a single mom raising two children. Obviously, we had a lot of economic challenges that have largely been documented everywhere, from CBS to Good Morning America and everywhere else. But there were moments when we were digging in dumpsters for dinner. We were trying to figure out what we gonna eat for dinner, lighting candles to provide light. But there was one thing that my mom continuously instilled in me, and that was your education is a ticket. Your education is undoubtedly a ticket. There were definitely moments along the way that I doubted myself. I'll never forget. I applied to medical school as I was finishing my undergrad. I had finally met a doctor, Dr. Patrick Greifenstein, who let me shadow him. So I had the shadowing experience. I had the letters of recommendation. I had the grades, but I didn't have the MCAT score. So I didn't get into medical school. And every day I'm really grateful that I didn't get into medical school. Because I later ended up getting a PhD and then getting a full ride to medical school. So I'm kind of glad I didn't get in the first time, because I probably would have had to pay for it. But I bring that up because not having that,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
big time. But I bring that up because not having that score, that MCAT score to get into medical school, made me, really question whether or not becoming a doctor, if it was something that I could actually do. Yeah, maybe I did have the grades, and maybe I did have the experience, but I questioned whether or not I was able to study hard enough, and I had the mental fortitude to study hard and long enough to do well on that medical college admissions test. Everyone knows how hard the MCAT is, and there's also some issues with that test in essence, with the test itself. But I think at the end of the day, no matter what, you have to do well on it in order to get into medical school.
Right.
And I don't think they're changing that anytime soon. And so I definitely question whether or not I was, going to be able to do it. I think the PhD gave me some time to have more confidence in my abilities. But also my PhD led me to mentors who gave me space, time, and helped me financially to be able to prepare better for that exam. And I'll talk about some of the stuff that I'm doing now to do the exact same thing what someone did for me.
Right. Well, before we get to that, and I don't know if we can flash the picture of the 15 white coats back up, but that image of you and your fellow Black medical students in white coats in front of a plantation went viral. What inspired, given everything you've told us about your background and your challenges, and maybe those moments of doubt around the MCAT, what made you decide to produce this photograph and make it happen?
Yeah, I mean, I always remember July 2019. July 2019, my daughter was out of school. It was just me and her, and my best friend, who also had gotten his PhD with me at NYU School of Medicine, had come down to visit me in New Orleans. And when you go to an HBCU, you have a different level of appreciation for Black history. And I knew about the Whitney Plantation and was really interested in visiting it. So my daughter and I and Philip, now Dr. Thomas, all went to visit it in July. And on our way back, I'll never forget my daughter. She was 8 years old at the time. She's 14 now, so that was 6 years ago. She said, "Dad, we've come a long way." And this is an 8-year-old. And she was like, "Yeah, Dad, we've come a very long way." And I was like, who is we, and what are you talking about? Because I was kind of confused. She was like, Dad, like, we're riding in this car right now, and there's like two doctors in this car, and they're Black men, and like, we just came from a place when like we weren't allowed to read, and we weren't allowed to engage in education. And I was like, wow, like if an
Smart little girl.
8-year-old can recognize that, I was like, if she can recognize that, how much more can the world recognize it if we just give them a display? So I came back and I talked to a couple of my colleagues, some of the very colleagues who were in that photo, Carrie Crook, Rachel Turner, Sydney Labat, who are all now physicians in their own right, an OBGYN, a family medicine physician, and a anesthesiologist, respectively. And was like, hey, man, like, I think we can go take these photos in all black with our white coats on and show the world, in spite of systemic systems and oppressive symptoms that had no intention for us to ever don those white coats, we can do that. Like we got what it takes to do that. And we went and we did it. December 19th, 2018, we went and took those photos. And I think if you were to talk to any of us, we can all remember what that moment felt like. We can all remember. No, go ahead.
No, well, I was going to ask you what did it feel like, and how have you seen it, that photo perhaps impact the conversation about Black representation in medicine?
Yeah, the moment was surreal. It almost felt like there was this transcendent approval for us to exist in our white coats from our ancestors. It was almost like we got a visit from them to be like, y'all gonna be all right.
Yeah.
If anybody's gonna be okay, y'all gonna be all right. And it almost felt like, I remember some of my colleagues saying, like, it's almost like they told us thank you. Like, thank you for never forgetting us. Thank you for honoring us. Thank you for coming back. And that photo has shifted a lot of conversations. Obviously, we've gotten a ton of press. And I remember when we got our first piece of press, it was with People Magazine. I remember this reporter from People Magazine calling Sydney, and Sydney was like, whose idea was this? Well, the lady said to Sydney, whose idea was this? And Sydney was like, this is Russell's idea. So they called me, and I remember I was sitting in the Starbucks studying for my board exam, and the lady called me and was like, I don't think you understand what you've done. Like, I don't think you can grasp. She was like, People Magazine doesn't call everyone.
Yeah.
She was like, if and we are calling you the same day you posted it. So that should tell you everything you need to know about what you just did. And I remember us later going on, Brett Ball went on CNN and Kelly Clarkson, and they said the same thing. They were like, this picture makes us realize the journey Black people have had to go through to get to where they are.
It is
Yeah.
truly powerful.
And so
yes,
I think it shifted the conversation for people who otherwise would have said, oh, maybe Black people are just complaining, or maybe this Black history thing is not that significant. Sometimes visual imagery has a way of triggering mental rewiring as a function of giving people time to process, because there's distance, right? So you can take this photo, reflect on it. A lot of people have purchased the photo and put it up in their home and have had to have these conversations around what is going on here, like what are we seeing, and why is this so jarring? And obviously my own personal story has had a lot of history and a lot of coverage, and so people are like, oh, this dude has done everything we ask Americans to do to check a box. He's a husband, he's a dad, he's a veteran, he's a pediatrician. He's like done all the things we ask Americans to do, and he's still fighting for representation. So that should tell you everything you need to know about this thing is real.
Right.
And obviously I'm not the only example, but I'm grateful to be one of many.
Yeah, it makes me think. Two phrases popped in my head as you were talking. One is, we are our ancestors' wildest dreams, right? And then the other is, a picture is worth 1,000 words, which in this, it is worth 100,000 words. So wanted to get your take on, we've talked about representation. What are the barriers, the systemic barriers, preventing more young Black students, especially boys? Because I do have to say, in the picture, there is a noticeable imbalance in men versus women in the picture. So especially boys, from succeeding.
Yeah, I think it's multifactorial. I think the first thing that comes to my mind oftentimes is representation. I think about the fact that we take that photo in a 2 foot by 3 foot poster and put it in classrooms all over the country. At this point, I think we're at over 50,000 classrooms.
Wow.
And and I have never seen a photo of a Black doctor on the wall until we did that. At a
Mhm.
school where kids spend so much
Yeah.
time, and
Yeah.
that's a twofold impact, right? Like there's the part of it where the kid who looks like I did when I was a kid sees that and says, "Oh, maybe I
Oh,
can be like them." So there's
right.
that part. And then there's the other part of it, which I know you know all too well, is that now that kid's colleagues, whether they look like him or not, will think, "Oh yeah, he can become like them." And there are
Mhm.
doctors who look like my friend in my classroom. And so when
Yeah.
when those kids become undergrad and medical students, they aren't asking their own classmates, "Do you even belong in this room?" Because they've
Yeah.
seen enough imagery to help them to understand that, oh yeah, there are people who can, look like my friend who's Black or brown, and he can become a physician because I've seen that for a very long time. The other part that plays a role in this, and we don't talk about it that often, is the economics of becoming a physician.
Mhm.
People don't understand how crippling it is to become a physician. There's this expectation when you come from a marginalized community that 4-year college may be enough for you to take the next economic step in the history of our family. I don't expect you to go on to do another 12 years worth of education. I mean, I've been in school for 13 years, and then I'm doing another 5 years. So I'll be a total of 18 years of training before I'm an attending. Right. So that's
Right.
a very long time for
You're
my family to
talking about
wait for me to
after
be
high
able to.
school. Yeah, you're talking about
And we
after
talking
high
about,
school. You're not talking about
yeah,
from pre-K.
oh,
You're right.
no,
Right.
no. We talking about by the time that I finish, I'll have done 30 years of
Yeah.
education total.
Yeah.
30 years? No family from a marginalized community is expecting you to learn for 30 years before you can economically contribute to our survival.
Right. Exactly.
And so
And
there's this
the
pressure.
deferred income. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, there's the deferred income. There's also the cost of getting into medical school. On average, right
Mhm.
now, it costs somewhere between $7,500 and $15,000 to apply one time.
Yeah.
One
Yeah.
time, and then what's the likelihood that you're gonna get in on the first shot? Especially with so many different programs that at least somewhat move the needle in the right direction with regards to diversity in medical education, have now been cut as a function of so many different factors. I'm gonna say it like that to save us all the trouble.
Yeah.
Um,
So let's even take a step back because you really talked a lot about the really big barriers. But even at the level of elementary school, there's studies that talk about, the factors that don't favor Black boys
yeah.
moving through the system. I know you're doing a program right now that helps to outreach young Black boys or young Black men who have
Hmm.
now been discouraged from school and have gone the other
Hmm.
way and are now in the
Hmm.
prison system. So, can you
Hmm.
tell us a little bit about that and some of the techniques that you use that might be generalizable for many young people?
Yeah, so I have been working with an amazing colleague and Judge Michelle Stroud, who's the lead juvenile judge for Franklin County, where Columbus, Ohio, in Columbus, Ohio, to figure out ways to bring mental health education um, and behavior change to young boys who are unfortunately found themselves involved in the justice system. These children, for some context, have, first of all, never seen someone like me ever. They all say the same thing. I
Mhm.
never forget, I was interacting with one of the kids and I was like, "Who do you think I am?" And they was like, "Can I be honest with you?" And I was like, "What's up?" They was like, "I think you the weed man." It was like, I think you the weed man. And I was like,
Okay.
I could see that.
All
It was
right.
like, you got some fresh J's on, you got a fitted hat on, your locks long, you got a beard on, you don't even sound like nothing other than the weed man. So like, that's probably who you are. And I was like, nah, I'm actually a doctor. And they was like, there's no way.
They were probably shocked. They were blown away.
They were so blown away. But you know what their next comment was? Because I had talked to them about mental health education before that, and I talked to them in a way that I know they can understand. You know, there's a language, there's a code that we can transfer between one another. And they was like, "Oh yeah, I'm buying what you're selling," because they understood
Mhm.
that I understood, and that meant so
Mhm.
much. And so I've been doing this with kids who are on both sides of adjudication. So the kids who have yet to be sentenced or adjudicated, and the kids who have been sentenced and adjudicated and are on the other side, and have been providing them with mental health education, some cognitive behavioral therapy that is very much culturally adaptive, um, and
What
figuring
is
out
cognitive
ways to,
what's cognitive behavioral therapy, if you could break that down for
so it's
everybody?
yeah, so it's essentially a form of psychotherapy. I guess you would think of it in very basic terms. It's like talk therapy, where you help them to figure out where their reasoning is, and challenge places where you realize maybe their reasoning is not as sharp as it could be,
Mhm.
and taking into account their educational level, their adverse childhood experiences, the social determinants of health, all of the issues that lead to them probably forming a lot of those beliefs, those
Mhm.
behaviors, those cognitive biases, right? And not shunning them for it, but helping them to see that there's a totally different
Navigate
way
their
to
way
go
through it.
about, yeah,
Mm.
yeah, in a way that doesn't feel demeaning, in a way that actually feels uplifting and humanizing, in a setting where it's hard to achieve
Yeah.
that. Because daily there obviously is a routine that very rarely is broken, and so there's almost like a breath of mental and physical fresh air to have someone to come in who not only understands you,
Mm.
but can help you be better, in a way that doesn't lead to punitive outcomes downstream. And we've seen fantastic results for these kids. These kids have had way less behaviors. A lot of them obviously making it all the way through the training has led to decreased sentencing, and in some cases them being able to go home. In many cases, has led to um, improve relationships with their parents, mending relationships with their children, because not some of them have children, which is
Mhm.
something that
Mhm.
sometimes people forget, and obviously leading to them making better choices, which
Yeah.
is which is I think the most satisfying component.
Yeah. I hear about the program, and I just think that it's just a brilliant way that you've weaved together your experience as a Black man, but your experience as a pediatrician, a
Hmm.
child and adolescent psychiatrist, um, and all the life experiences that you've had to be able to relate to young Black people and the challenges that they face. So we almost need to bring the audience in for questions. So one last question from me: if you were
Of course.
speaking directly to a young Black student who, you know, may not have a dream, right?
Hmm.
How do you relate to them in helping them to set goals for themselves? What do you say?
Yeah, the first thing I always tell them is take a breath. Oftentimes you feel like the world is asking you to make a decision today. And the reality of it is that you got to take into account where you are in life and what challenges you have ahead of you. If you're a Black boy, there are so many systemic challenges that are facing you that you need to take into account when you do anything. The second thing I tell them is I need you to write down the wildest aspirations you could possibly come up with that are education related, whether it's becoming a
Mhm.
lawyer, a pharmacist, a doctor, a firefighter, maybe a police officer, a detective, whatever. I need you to take the wildest versions, not the ones that feel like they're very reachable and very attainable. I need you to get the ones that will probably challenge what's real and what's not. And then the third thing is that I need you to figure out someone who you can trust who will give you solid advice. And then I need you to fight your brain and take that advice. Oftentimes for a lot of kids, that's their parents. And a lot of kids fight the information from their parents. Like they fight it with every tooth and nail. And so I always challenge kids. It's like, just tell me one thing your parents are telling you that you're willing to give up the fight on. Just one thing.
Right.
And the kids,
Has to be one
oftentimes the
thing.
kids will,
Yeah.
oftentimes the kids will be like, the first thing they'll give up is, I'll clean my room on a regular basis. And I'm like, believe it or not, there's a book that actually talks about why I make my bed every morning. And that's a huge tool towards fantastic success. And what you end up finding out is that those kids see outcomes from listening to whoever this person is, that leads to them listening more.
Right.
Because at young ages, obviously you need guidance. It's just that no one's ever told you that, hey, you need guidance. And essentially what I'm doing is prepping them for eventual mentorship that's very formal. Because obviously, as you know, when you go into medicine, you need like a million mentors to get through.
Yes. Yeah.
And then eventually, as they get older and get to high school, then we start to talk about, here are some skills that I'm gonna need you to develop in order for you to really consider going into medicine. Because I often actually don't push for everyone to go into medicine. I think you have to have an insatiable desire to learn in order to go into medicine, because the only people I know in medicine are people who love to learn.
Yes.
Like
Right.
they don't have any problem whatsoever with learning all the time. Like they find new information fascinating, and exciting. And that's not everyone. Some people become fatigued with that. And so, and then those are the kids that I pull out and I'm like, okay, now I need you to buckle up.
Yep. Well, incredible points that you've made. Want to bring Lila and Wayne back in, see what's going on in the chat, see if we have any questions, comments from the audience for Dr. Ledet. What are y'all seeing out there?
For sure. Well, I have a bunch of questions myself, but we'll get to the audience. Dr. Ledet, you are a walking, talking, amazing success story. Do you have one success story that you can share with us from the mentoring that you've done?
Yeah, actually, he just texted me like an hour ago. Brian Washington, student Dr. Brian Washington, which interestingly is the person who took the photo of the 15 white folks.
Oh, wow.
So very short story. When I got to medical school, there was a young man who was the son of, and his father was our landlord of the house that we were living in while I was in medical school. And, he had expressed that he wanted to become a doctor. And I was like, oh, really? I was like, well, if you want to become a doctor, I think you should follow me everywhere I go while I'm in medical school. Now, he was an undergrad and he was living in New Orleans. So he didn't really have an excuse as to why he couldn't show up when I went to study at 5 o'clock in the morning at the coffee shop. He didn't have an excuse when I was like, yo, all the medical students are going to the Whitney Plantation. You should just come with us. Look, we're all studying and ordering pizza. Like, just come to the building and study with us. And so that model for him, like the proximity to medical education for a Black man who was so young, is like, I mean, Dr. Clark knows this, but like when you think about the kids who get access to the OR while they're in high school, in the emergency room when they're in college, those kids do not look like the success story. They generally don't. And I was aware of that because even when I was in medical school, I didn't see very many people who look like me. And so I told him, like, you know what, you're coming with me everywhere. And now he's actually a second year medical student at the exact same medical school that I was at. And he just texted me and told me that he's preparing for his first board exam.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
That's
well, good luck, Dr. Washington, to be.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Good luck.
That's beautiful.
Young man. We have a question from Yvonne Smith. A few questions from Yvonne, but one, talk about the mental health strength that it takes to go through all the training.
Yeah. I'll preface it by saying mental health strength is incredibly important, but I also think physical community is probably more important. The doubts that come with this journey are plethrous. There are so many. Like I wake up every day and have to remind myself that I belong. Let's just be honest about it. And so there's that. I have my wife who is my best friend. She's been married to me since I was 19 years old. So she's been with me literally since I was a kid, and has watched me go through all of this education. And the moments when I've cried and the moments when like I was telling Dr. Mel earlier, have thought maybe I don't belong. I've had the physical community to remind me, no, you absolutely do belong. And these challenges are normal, because there's ebbs and flows to a path upward. It's not a straight path upward. It like has ebbs and flows, and that is normal. I think internally, I have developed this mental fortitude over time. I think there are experiences that are immeasurable for me, specifically being in the military. I deployed multiple times. And so I've been in challenging situations multiple times. And that has led to me not worrying as much about the feat that is in front of me, whether it's studying 1,000 Anki cards in a day or going through 250 questions in 6 hours or whatever it was. Like I understood that I've seen bridges built in a day. And so whatever this is, it can be done. It's just a matter of not being afraid, or acknowledging my fears and recognizing that my fears don't have to cripple me. But I haven't always had that mindset. I think it's just taken time. It's taken a lot of therapy. And then it's taken a lot of mentors who have let me know that, look, bro, you ain't the first one. You're not going to be the last one, who will have to get through this. And you either going to get through it or you're going to give up. You only got really two options. So buckle up, lean on somebody, cry when you need to, and keep it pushing.
And if I could just add one thing, just from my own experience, looking at that photograph, right? The reason why I think that photograph is so powerful is images go straight to your subconscious. And that's where the doubts are coming from. So if you have a counterbalancing image in your subconscious that lets you know it is possible. I see these people that look like me, and the disqualifying thing that my subconscious is telling me is what society has tried to tell me is a disqualifying factor, but I'm looking up here, I'm seeing it's a qualifying factor. That's so powerful, because a lot of my doubts, along the way, and the questioning that I had came from, being in a predominantly white institution for college and for medical school, and having people question my very right to be there. So that, again, kudos to you for the picture, because again, it says 1,000 words.
Wow.
Such an important piece that you all are mentioning, and you haven't put it this way, but I don't think any of us would consider that medical doctors or psychologists ever have imposter syndrome or ever feel like they're not, you know what I'm saying? Because honestly, we revere you in such a way because you have done the work, you've done all the study, you've dedicated so much time and energy and effort to become a doctor. We don't consider that, but we're all human beings. So I acknowledge you both for even sharing that part of the journey.
That's a whole nother episode.
That's a whole other conversation
of the challenges along the way.
Yeah, you got to remember this too, that we exist within a system that has some unfavorable environments for us.
Sure.
On a regular basis. I have more cultural and mental proximity oftentimes to janitorial services, the people working in the cafeteria, the people working at the front desk, than I do to my colleagues.
Sure.
They give me the head nod, they hand me the peppermints, they give me a little extra food when I go to the cafeteria. They tell me, look, pick your head up, you belong here. They the ones who catch you on overnight shift. They're like, no, baby. Listen, let me pray for you real quick. I never forget this. I was an intern, and there was this janitor, an old lady. She was cleaning up one of the floors that I was walking on, and she was like, baby, I see you walking with your head down. She was like, first of all, pick your head up. She was like, walk with your head high. She was like, you belong here. She handed me some peppermints. She was like, now when you get sleepy, take one of these peppermints, it'll wake you up. She was like, the other thing, give me your hand. And she prayed for me.
Wow.
And I'll never forget it. I'll never forget it. I'll never forget it.
Yeah.
Because I understood that she understood what was going on.
Yeah.
You know, and I didn't need to tell her. She already knew what time it was.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you about to start the waterworks here.
I know.
Yeah.
You
Definitely for
about to
me.
start the waterworks.
Yeah.
I want to say two things because and also Dr. Ledet, and after you finish your answer, Dr. Clark, since you were a assistant dean of a medical school, y'all don't even know that about Dr. MEL. Dr. MEL was assistant dean of a med school, HBCU medical school, and we have this question. DEI in medicine has been under attack in certain circles. What would you say to people who don't see why diversity in healthcare matters?
I will start off by saying this. I can understand why they think it doesn't matter. Because every time we make these efforts to create equal footing, the answer has always been, oh, it doesn't matter. Because it is this answer that you don't actually have to provide quantification for it.
Right.
It's just it's purely opinion based. It's like, oh, I don't think it matters, even if you think it matters, and it's experiential in nature. So it's an experience of understanding that, like, when you walk in a room with that auntie who come from Cook and Pratt, you understand, like, hey, auntie, how you doing? That's so important for me to say, how are you doing? That can lead to you actually taking your blood pressure medication,
Right.
you actually taking your glucose every morning, you actually coming in for your blood pressure checks. All of these things is like, no, that baby came in here and said, how am I doing? They actually, or, you know, how your mama and them, those kinds of things are experiential in nature. And so it's easy to cancel them out because, I mean, we've done this for forever, right? Like, even if you think about the value of experience when it came down to Emmett Till, everybody knew it wasn't real. Everybody knew it didn't make sense, but it was about validating the experience and invalidating other experiences. There were so many people who said, nah, that's not what happened. But invalidating the experience of people who are not empowered is very simple to do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All you have to do
Yes.
is control the narrative. Like, all you have to do is control the narrative, and it's simple. Like, you just say, no, that's not a good narrative. Like, just don't worry about them. They just talking, whatever. But we know, all of us know. And I mean, and the crazy thing is that we also have data to back up what we know, right? Like, when we talk about cultural concordance, there's so much data to talk about enhanced communication, enhanced adherence. We talk about better outcomes for patients Black and brown patients who have Black and brown providers. That data is valid, right? But the experiential component of that exact same data can be canceled out. You could be like, whatever. And so that's really where we are. And so, at the end of the day, what I oftentimes tell them is like, why does this photo shock you?
Dr. MEL?
Very little to add, but let me just say, trust is the basis of every relationship. And there has been so much mistrust in society because of the history of the way that Black people have been treated by white people and the dominant society. It bubbles into every aspect of life, and healthcare interactions are no different. I can't tell you the legions of people who have told me I didn't go back to that doctor because of the way he treated me, or because he talked down to me, or because he didn't or she didn't respect me. And it's much less likely. I'm not going to say that Black doctors are perfect, but it's much less likely to happen in an interaction where there's concordance and cultural understanding and trust happens. The other thing I would just say too is, we talk about health disparities. Health disparities cost the United States money. If you have a whole segment of your population that could be doing better and contributing working, contributing ideas, contributing manpower, contributing leadership, but they can't because they're sidelined, because they're sick, you're losing out as a country. So anything that can help move the needle of getting rid of those differences in how people do in terms of their health and wellness should be something that we're all running towards, not running away from.
Yep.
We're shooting ourselves in the foot because of racism.
Yep.
Yeah.
Lie.
In thinking about your impact, Dr. Ledet, what do you want your legacy to be?
Oh, lie. That's so ever evolving. Honestly, at this point, what I want is for some Black boy to know that there's somebody who understands them, who can also treat their mental health issues. That means more to me than because when I was a kid, nobody asked me what I was thinking or how I was feeling. It was like, suck it up. You need to just be a man about it. And even with these kids, I literally just had this conversation with some kids who are currently incarcerated. And I was like, what happens when you say, like, that hurts or I'm fearful? You know what they equated fear to? Weakness.
Mm-hmm.
They equated fear to weakness. It was like, so let me get this right. If you're scared of something, you're weak. And I remember asking them, so what happened when you were afraid of the dark when you were a kid? They're like, yeah, I was told to just suck it up. And I was like, what was that teaching you? That your needs, your basic needs, are not that valuable. And so I want to reverse that just a little bit. I want to reverse it. Actually, I want to reverse it a lot. And so we doing that through the cartoons. We doing that through the work that I'm doing with Inner Words with incarcerated children. I'm also doing it with grown men who are re-entering society from the Department of Corrections. And reteaching them that their needs and their wants and their feelings are still valuable, even though they were previously incarcerated for 10, 20, some 30 and 40 years.
Wow. Well, I could talk to you all evening. This has been just amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your story, sharing yourself, sharing your wisdom. We really appreciate you, Dr. Ledet. And of course, to Lila and Wayne, thank you so much for all the wonderful questions. And of course, my Be Health Empowered family, we love you. Thank you for tuning in. Until I see you again, be wise, be well, and be health empowered.